I've been putting off making this video for weeks because I feel like honestly I failed at this program, or maybe the program failed me. I don't know, we'll get into it in a minute. I showed up every week, I did the workouts, I followed the recommendations exactly, and I find myself at the end of the 12 weeks with basically no improvement in my running abilities or my cardio systems, and I can't tell you how disappointed I am. I have a video about starting my journey to become a runner, so if you're interested in my background and starting point, I will link that down below, but today we're gonna jump straight into it. I'll talk about my stats, my experience with the program, my injury, who I think this program is best for, and whether or not I'll be continuing. I've gotten some heat in the past for sharing my honest experience and feedback with Natacha Oceane's workout programs, but that is not gonna stop me from being transparent about my experience with her hybrid program today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Cadence, and I'm so happy to have you. On this channel, I share and test evidence-based health and fitness tools so that we can reach our health goals together. You have a lot of options for primary distance and focus for the program. I chose the beginner distance and the running focus. That included 2 slow runs per week, 1 upper body gym session, 1 lower body gym session, and 2 optional running specific training sessions that you can tack on at the end of the workout. My run started out alternating between walking and running, and then eventually progressed into continuous slow running for the duration of the run, and the time increased every week. Let's talk about my stats, which I'm not super thrilled to be sharing. VO2 max is one of the most important health indicators. It's really good at predicting longevity, risk of disease, how long people will live, as well as assessing aerobic endurance. So I chose that as my main metric I was hoping to improve throughout the challenge. The formal definition is the maximum amount of oxygen that an individual can utilize during intense or maximal exercise. I started the program with a 34.4 Apple Watch measured VO2 max, and I ended the program with a 30.7 VO2 max. The lowest of the period was 28.8. So obviously not what I was hoping to see after spending 12 weeks focusing on my running and trying to improve it. Let's be very clear, Apple Watches are not perfect, but I did a lot of research to see if perhaps the way the Apple Watch was measuring my runs was the reason why my VO2 max appeared to be going down. Apple Watches seem to be, based on my research, at least directionally accurate. So if you see your VO2 max over a longer period of time going down or going up, although the actual value may not be exactly what it would be if you had it measured or tested at a facility, it allows you to track changes over time and general direction pretty well. So unfortunately, I am fairly confident I did see a regression in my VO2 max after doing this program. I also measured my progress by doing a timed 2-mile run on the exact same run path at the start of the program and the end of the program. At the beginning of the program, my run took me 30 minutes and my average heart rate was 144. At the end of the program, the run took me 31 minutes and my average heart rate was 155. So certainly not what I was hoping to see there. I was hoping that at least these runs would feel easier or better, even if my stats didn't show any improvements, but unfortunately they feel more or less the same. And I don't feel like it's getting easier for me to run the same speeds or distances. I just really don't feel like I've gotten any better. So why didn't this program work for me? I really wish I knew the answer, and if I did, I would tell you, but I do have a lot of hypotheses that I'll share with you in case it's helpful for you in your running journey, whether you're doing the program, or maybe just things that you can consider and you may want to do differently than I did. I want to be clear, I don't think this is exclusively my fault or exclusively the program's fault. It's likely a little bit of both. Not knowing the answer is incredibly frustrating for me, so bear with me here. My first hypothesis is that I am what we'd call a non-responder to moderate intensity continuous cardio training. One study that I'll link down below found that 40% of people who did moderate intensity continuous training over a 6-month period did not see improvements in their VO2 max as a result of the training. Non-response seemed to be reduced in the study when vigorous exercise was used rather than this just moderate continuous training. And I think I may be one of those lucky 40% who doesn't respond. If the percent of people who didn't see a response was like 5% or something, then I would be like, oh, whatever. 5%, you know, I'm just so rare and special. But 40% is almost half of respondents, at least in this study. Of course, no study is holy, but yeah, that's a pretty big number of people. If you sat me down at the beginning of this program and said that there was a 40% chance that I would go through the full 12 weeks working really hard, focusing on this goal, and I would see absolutely no improvement, then I would have said, oh, okay, well then I'm not gonna do it that way. I would rather sprinkle in some more vigorous high intensity stuff in shorter durations rather than doing all this moderate intensity training, because I don't want to take the risk of spending all of this time working hard and not seeing any results. Unfortunately, that wasn't something I found out about until after this program ended, and I wanted to do some research to try and figure out why it might not have worked for me, so it's something I really wish that I had known about at the beginning of the program. My next hypothesis is that I just needed more time running. I've heard several recommendations from professionals in the field like Andrew Huberman and others that anywhere from 90 to 120 minutes of zone 2 cardio per week is essential for improving performance, endurance, as well as really important for your health. A couple of weeks ago, I was listening to the Huberman Lab endurance episode with Andy Galpin, and he states explicitly that doing all of your training in zone 2 intensity without any speed work is, and I quote, suboptimal, and how important the adaptations are from all different speeds of training. That low to moderate intensity is really important for building aerobic systems, and the higher intensity is important for waste clearance. And what I mean by waste is lactic acid, which I talked about in detail in my first Becoming a Runner video. And everything I said about lactic acid is true. It is painful. It does make running more difficult, but it's important for our body to learn how to clear lactic acid and become more efficient at it. That's an adaptation that allows us to do speed work or more endurance running without as much pain. I was so frustrated when I heard about the suboptimal thing because I was like, I have just spent 3 months specifically training slow just to hear that it's suboptimal. She has the beginners sitting at around 40 minutes of total running per week at the start of the program, and by the end you work up to 90 minutes, and even so, 90 minutes is at the bottom of that 90 to 120 minute range that's being recommended by a lot of professionals in this field. I've even heard recommendations as high as 3 to 6 hours per week of zone 2 cardio. The next one is that I hurt my shin and I took a week off, and I'll touch on this a little bit more later and how I injured my shin doing one of the workouts from the program, but I don't think this is a huge deal. Lots of people take a week off to vacation, or maybe they get sick or whatever, so I really don't think this was part of it, but I wanted to throw it out there just in case maybe it contributed a little. The next was the fueling and calorie recommendations. So the program recommended a calorie intake that was 500 calories above my maintenance. At the beginning of the program, my runs were only 15 or 20 minutes, so it's not like I was doing a lot of intense cardio and needed to be refueling that intensely necessarily. I mean, everyone's needs are different, but I'm just talking about myself specifically. It's possible that if I'd eaten that extra 500 calories a day, I would have seen more improvements, had more energy for my workouts, etc. But I wasn't willing to risk the possibility of putting on an additional pound of body fat per week because of those additional 500 calories, because that would have added up to a total of 12 pounds across the program. And as many of you know, if you've been following my channel, I have been working on healthy, sustainable fat loss over the last 6-ish months. In fact, you could argue that I was decreasing my training volume because going on these runs for shorter periods of time than I would have been training if I was doing my lifting workouts that I was doing previously. I imagine that calorie surplus is a lot more important for people who are running 15, 20 miles a week on the longer distances. So instead, I just listened to my body, ate when I was hungry, I ate more if I felt really hungry. As I've alluded to, based on following the program as written, I did 0 speed work, which I think was honestly a mistake. I didn't really ever spike my heart rate above 150 beats per minute, so my body did not get better at waste management and clearing out that lactic acid. She says that her intention with the beginner version of the program is to focus on aerobic systems, which I think makes sense, but I didn't really see the improvements I was hoping to see in my aerobic systems either. She often references how effective the polarized training model is, where you do 20-ish% of your work in the higher intensity zones, 80% of your work in lower intensity, but we were not using the polarized model for the beginning version of the program. It was exclusively slow. The last reason could be that I was not patient enough. Maybe 12 weeks isn't long enough to see results or improvement. I would at least hope that my VO2 max would stay stable though. So if that's the case though, I raise you, why didn't she say that? This is a program that I need to be doing for a year consistently before I see results, then that's fine. But I think that's something you need to say. It's really hard to explain how frustrating and disappointing it is to spend 3 months working towards one single goal and see yourself go backwards or stay about the same. I've read that PDF back to front several times and I didn't see anything about needing to repeat the program, wait for progress, etc. I assume that you would see some type of progress within the 3-month period. Maybe VO2 max isn't the right metric, but based on my research, it seems like it is the gold standard when it comes to measuring aerobic fitness. I'm not sure what else I could have used there besides timing my runs. Let's talk about the things I liked in the program. There was a detailed nutrition section with sample days. She talks about macronutrients, micronutrients, how much you should be getting of each, supplementation. She had a calculator for your calories based on your body weight, which version of the program you're doing. Compared to other programs of hers that I've done, there is a lot more coaching notes. So for example, a basic squat may be modified in the coaching notes by asking you to focus on power, or maybe doing a 1-second hold at the bottom of the squat, things like that. In this program, she programmed in warm-up sets for the compound movements like squats, deadlifts, etc. So I really liked that and I didn't need to add that in myself separately. The lifting days reminded me a lot of her other programs, functional, athletic, and varied. The basic composition was usually 1 to 2 compound moves, squats, deadlifts, hip thrusts, leg press, chest press, barbell rows, etc. Then moving into some more accessory work focused on smaller muscle groups like glutes or biceps, for example. Then usually finishing out with something more functional like walking lunges, marches, things that get you into different planes of motion. If you like variety in your gym sessions, you would love this program. Almost no workout was the same. The PDF is packed with value beyond just the program that you'll be following for your running. There's a detailed explanation of how to use the program, how to pick a focus, how to pick a distance, and then how you should do every type of run. She explains the different types of resistance training and the goals of each, how to do progressive overload, how much rest you should be doing for each type of lift, and how you can track your progress throughout the program. One of the most impressive things about my experience with this program was how much strength I maintained, even though I I started doing half of my workouts as running instead of lifting. Between the beginning and the end of the program, I was able to add 5 pounds to my 6 rep max for bench press. I maintained my weight and reps for squats, and I maintained my weight I took a little bit of weight off, but significantly improved my form on hip thrusts. When you cut the amount of lifting that you're doing in half, it's almost impossible to see significant improvements, but I was just really happy to see things stay relatively stable. I also don't feel any less strong than I did at the start of the program, and I don't think I look any less strong or any less muscular, which I am really happy about. One thing I found really helpful was I started doing my lifting sessions on the weekends so that I could take my time and make sure that I wasn't rushing through them or going light on the weight, that I was resting sufficiently, because I knew I'm only doing 2 lifting sessions a week and I need to really focus to maintain all of the muscle I've built over the last few years. That was really helpful for me, and I would recommend doing that if it's feasible for you. If weekends aren't an option, just making sure your sessions are during times where you don't have to rush through it and you can really focus on resting and going hard during your working sets. But the rest of the credit goes to her programming here. I just think she did a really good job covering all of the muscle groups. One area that I do feel like I lost a lot of strength was my core, but I will talk about that in the next section. The run specific gym training had a lot of new and fun moves. There was a lot of plyometrics and jumping, which is always fun to do new and interesting things. My ankles feel more mobile, my calves feel a lot stronger, and I just feel a little bit more agile after adding these extra sessions in. There were some moments where I felt silly in the gym, but hey, that is what it's all about. So let's talk about the things that I didn't like as much about the program or struggled with. The athlete app is not really built to accommodate a program that's this flexible. No week ever looks complete because there are so many different ways that you can complete the program depending on what your focus is. You also have to scroll through like a 70-page PDF to find your running program for the week, or you have to keep a screenshot of it since the athlete app does not have your running information within the workouts. Besides those sets that work up to your working weight, there are no warm-ups included in the program, which isn't a huge deal to me, but just in case it is to you, I wanted to mention it. She suggests 5 minutes of dynamic stretching and similar movements to what you'll be doing in the workout just to get you warmed up and primed. I've mentioned this in previous reviews, but I still think the order of the exercises is unreasonable sometimes, and people always roast me and say like, oh, just do them in the order you want to. And I do try, but sometimes I miss an exercise when I'm looking through the workout and then I see it later and I'm like, oh my God, I just gave up my squat rack and now I need it again. And that is super frustrating. Obviously, it's not that hard to scroll around and do the exercises in the order that makes sense based on the equipment you have. Although I know she probably sets them up to be optimal, I like to keep it simple. If I've got a squat rack, I'm doing all of my rack exercises at one time. I also just go to a really crowded public gym that I have to wait for equipment all the time, so that probably makes this a little bit extra frustrating. The time estimates for how long workouts will take are also still pretty far off in my experience. I was not able to complete a gym session in under 70 minutes this whole time, and the estimate was 60. On previous reviews, I've gotten so many comments of people saying that they're able to finish them with time to spare, and I love that for you. But one thing to consider, if you're resting for 20 to 30 seconds and you can get right back into it, what I like to do in that situation is I will continue increasing my weight until I need 60 to 120 seconds, as she recommends in the PDF, for rest. Do with this information what you will. Like I mentioned, I lost a little bit of core strength, which was a little bit of a bummer, but no program will be able to successfully improve everything. There's always going to be something that you sacrifice, or at least usually. I don't think it's a fault of the program, it's just something I wanted to share with you. So what I started doing at about the halfway point was adding in my own ab and core workouts at the end. Sometimes there were some ab and core workouts in the running specific training or thrown in throughout the workouts, but it was kind of every once in a while, not every time. I just really like having a strong core, so I added them back in myself. Sometimes the variety is too much variety, at least for my taste. I know everyone has different preferences, but sometimes I feel like it's hard to see progress when I'm switching up exercises so often. There's a feature on Athlete where you can see all of your previous sets of an exercise and weights and all of that. For a lot of exercises, even in week 11 and 12, I had never done the exercise before. For me, that just got a little bit annoying, and it would get mentally fatiguing to be doing new exercises all the time and having to learn new movements and stuff. That's just a personal preference. The biggest con for me is that I got so bored of running. It's probably because I had to do the same slow run, the same distance, the same amount of time. I mean, you'd be adding like 5 minutes or so every week, but basically the same exact run twice a week for 12 weeks. It just got so boring for me. I would have loved to see some HIIT work, maybe a long bike workout, maybe some sprints, maybe some speed or tempo running, just anything to switch things up and add a little bit of interest. I understand that it's a beginner program, but beginners we can do a little bit of HIIT. We can do a little sprinting. We can do a little speed work, okay? anyway. It just would have been really nice, especially by the end. I was like resenting my runs, not because I was tired, just because they were so boring. Let's talk about my wish list, the things I would love to see in the program. I think the program's packed full of value already, but I spent a lot of time researching on the side of the program, so I wanted to share the things that I had to research on my own that weren't included in the program, just in case they are deal breakers for you. The program didn't cover recovery, cool downs, stretching, and how to adjust your running amounts based on your recovery. There was no discussion of sleeping or rest, or electrolytes, hydration, water, or how adding in cardio can cause dehydration. You need to make sure to account for that. Advice on selecting shoes or other gear could have been helpful as well. I had to do a lot of research on shoes, and I have a shoe review video for the running shoes I used throughout these 12 weeks that should be coming out soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. There was no discussion of whether this program can or should be done on a treadmill. It kind of implied that it should be done outdoors. I looked everywhere and I could not find the word treadmill anywhere. This program came out in the spring, so it was probably released with the intention of being done outside in the summer, but we're coming into the fall and winter now, and I know, at least for myself, I am not an outdoor runner in the snow. That is not happening. Would be interesting to hear her thoughts on whether or not this program could be done on a treadmill. She also doesn't have anything on injury prevention or recovery from injury or suggestions, and I understand that that's something you should probably see a professional for, but another wishlist item is searchable exercise alternatives when you can't do the original exercise and there is not a progression included. So maybe like I needed to do an alternative for a leg press because the leg presses were taken, I didn't have enough time to wait for them, for example. I would have to look up or come up with my own alternative. A lot of the other apps that I use have exercise alternatives and they're really simple and accessible, so I do love that feature and it would be cool to see that in Athlete. It would be nice if the progressive overload was programmed in. So she does discuss it in the PDF, but it's something you kind of have to do on your own. But I know a lot of programs will kind of slowly increase your reps or weight, and it's nice when it's written in for you rather than you having to do the math yourself. These workouts use a lot of equipment, so it would be really cool to see a little bit more of shared equipment. So for example, all of the free weight stuff that you do, rather than doing kettlebells, dumbbells, slam balls, etc., like trying to use the same equipment as much as possible. Like for example, one lower body day that I did used a leg press, a bench and barbell, squat rack, a hamstring curl machine, and a box, as well as a plate and a set of kettlebells. That is just one workout. So that is a lot of running around, which in my opinion is kind of a waste of time sometimes. The lack of programmed rest time and a rest timer in Athlete is killing me. Rest timers are one of my favorite features in other workout apps, and it would be so amazing to see timed rest. It just really helps me to stay on track and not get distracted like scrolling Instagram. But of course you can time your own rest. Let's talk about how I got injured, and I will give you a word of caution about the run specific gym training in this program. About halfway through the program, I injured my shin pretty badly. And I had to take about a week off, and then the next week that I came back, I had to take it really easy. So it ended up being about 2 weeks-ish. I was being silly, but I was also really exhausted from the workout that I had just done and probably should not have been continuing to exercise, but I was trying to strictly follow the program. Basically, I was supposed to be doing a box jump, but there were no boxes near me, so I just ended up using a bench, that was my mistake. Do not make that mistake. My gym has these big, cushy, soft boxes where if you fall and land on them, it's not gonna hurt too bad, just kind of squishy. The bench is not squishy, and it did hurt very bad. So I failed my box jump and I landed on my right shin with all of my weight. It was a box jump where I was landing on one single leg. Yeah, immediately my shin swelled up like there was a golf ball in it. I was in so much pain. I like went home and iced it. And like I said, I took a full week off of doing any weight bearing exercise on my leg or running or walking, trying to move as little as possible. And then in the second week, I started to ease back into it without any weights. I just kind of did a little bit of walking. And then by the third week, I was able to get back into it. I honestly think the run specific gym training is a little bit dangerous. And here's the reason why. If you're pushing yourself, as she recommends, close to failure for 70 minutes, which was the average amount of time that these sessions would take me, and then you're tacking on an additional 20 minutes, and the exercises are often jumping related. So you're jumping onto a box, off to a box, you're like doing pogo jumps up and down, you're jumping side to side. I just think that having that at the end of the workout, when you have the least amount of muscular endurance, the least amount of energy, you're maybe a little bit off balance, your ankles are kind of wobbly, I just think you are ripe for injury at that point in the workout. So I'm not sure if it would have been safer to do it at the beginning of the workout, or maybe I just needed to do it on a totally separate day, but the program did recommend that you add them on after your gym sessions. So I was following what the program suggested, and it's certainly not the program's fault that I got injured, but something to keep in mind is that these are very athletic movements that can be really challenging. So if you're doing this program, please take the running specific training seriously and be really, really careful with your ankles, shins, and knees doing all of this jumping. Yeah, if I could go back in time, I would have done those workouts fresh rather than doing doing them after an intense lifting session. For context, I am not a beginner to plyometric training, to jumping, and I'm not a beginner lifter. So I think it could be even more sketchy if you are a true beginner and doing these movements for the first time. So please, please, please be careful. The other thing is that it's really tough when you don't have the recovery routine and knowledge that a professional athlete does to be doing such athletic type movements. So who is this program good for? And is it good for beginners? I would say yes, it's good for beginner runners, especially if you're a true beginner who's never really done running before. If you're a beginner lifter, then the lifts in this program might be kind of complicated. I don't know if it would be a good starting point for lifts. If you're more like me, someone who's been lifting for a while, who has run in the past, maybe getting back into running or has a little bit of experience running, I don't think the beginner program will be as effective for you. Like, obviously I didn't see the results that I wanted. I think I probably should have gone for the 5K, although the program specifically recommended to me based on a test that I did that I should be in the beginner program. I don't think I really should have been in the beginner program. So if you're in a similar boat to me, I would recommend going for the 5K distance, even if you don't technically qualify for it, or just adding in your own speed and HIIT training as needed. At the end of the day, sometimes training style comes down to personal preference, and I really think it's much more of an art than a science. So she made some artistic choices in how she wanted to program the beginner version to just focus on aerobic systems. And although as a buyer of this program and someone who dedicated a lot of time and energy to it, I'm so disappointed that I didn't see really any results. I don't think it's a fault of the program necessarily. Our response to training is so individualized and based on so many factors. It is what it is. And I'm sharing all of this just so that you guys don't have the same experience. If you're starting this program or thinking about buying this program, you can go into it with this knowledge that if you're not seeing results after the first maybe like 5 or 6 weeks, maybe start to sprinkle in a little bit of high intensity and speed work. If you're on the beginner track especially, because everything after the beginner distance has some tempo runs and speed work incorporated, so you should be covered there, but I'm speaking specifically on the beginner version. I think this program's a good fit for people who love variety in their gym sessions, who want to maintain their existing muscle and strength while improving running, and if you're willing to be patient for your results. This is not something you're going to see overnight results with. It's a lot more of the slow, sustainable approach. I don't think this is a good program for anyone who wants quick and easy workouts. This is definitely a significant time commitment, especially if you're getting into those longer distances. The big question, will I continue or repeat this program? Right now, I'm feeling really frustrated and disappointed, and I honestly just think I need some time to cool off. The weather got really cold where I live this week, and I'm someone who hates running outside in the cold. I don't have the right gear for it. Getting the right gear for it would be really expensive, and I just hate being in the cold. I also hate running on the treadmill because I just find it so boring, and I spend the whole time just thinking about the fact that I'm running, which is so much worse. I am still determined to become a runner, and improving my cardiovascular health and VO2 max are still my #1 priority. I'm just gonna shift the way that I'm approaching that goal now that I've learned so much, both from this program and from Natacha, as well as all of this other outside research I've done about non-response and what you can do next when you don't respond to that moderate intensity training that so many people do see success with. I'm gonna be doing some high intensity interval training, sprint intensity interval training, which is similar to high intensity, but with a little bit more rest, a little bit more intense work. I'm gonna do some body weight workouts. I wanna be like a weapon at, burpees and squat jumps and all that type of stuff. I'm gonna be biking and adding in other types of indoor cardio that I can do inside of my gym during the winter season. At the end of the day, I know that if I continue to push myself and get my heart rate up, my cardio systems will improve. So although I'm disheartened, I am confident in my ability to keep going for this goal. I'm really excited to pick running back up in a few months this spring once the weather warms up again, and I think I'm gonna be in a much better place physically. I'm gonna be much better equipped, hopefully with a better aerobic base, better waste clearance of that lactic acid, and improved oxygenation systems in my body, which are all adaptations of the type of endurance training that I'm gonna be doing throughout the winter season. If you have any questions about the program that I didn't already address, please leave a comment down below and I would be happy to answer. If you found this video helpful, the best way to support my channel is give it a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. I will see you next time.